Very good. Well, welcome to the Mitchell Hour and Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies. General McInerney, good to see you. It was about this time of year back in 1940 when the first American volunteers arrived on British soil to serve in the famous Eagle squadrons, flying Spitfires. Who wouldn't volunteer for that? And I want to say to the Air Chief, I'm a volunteer today. I'll come back. Only a year later, they shot down their first German Messerschmitt. And since then, there's been no greater example of the special relationship between our two countries as there has been between the Royal Air Force and the U.S. Air Force. It's a foundation of action across the planet. It's strong, it cannot be broken. And whatever we can do to help you with that, Air Chief Wigston, we'll do that from Mitchell Institute. From the challenges of force interoperability to modernization operations in Southwest Asia, in Middle East, our air forces look toward each other for respect, for support, for advice, and to be on each other's wing. And the world is increasingly becoming complex, from black flag terror organizations to the resurgent issues of China and Russia, issues of resources, issues of policy, alliance structures like NATO. The Royal Air Force and the U.S. Air Force are indeed challenged. Fortunately, we know that the options that aerospace power brings to our nation's leaders is more important today than it ever has been. And once again, to that end, we're on your wing, Air Chief. Air Chief Mike Wigston took reign in July of the Royal Air Force. He was exquisitely prepared for that job, being steeped in operations, warfighting operations, policy planning, capabilities development, and command. He's also a gifted public servant, sir. Now to describe the panorama from the view of and perspective of the Royal Air Force Air Chief, I introduce to you Air Chief Marshal Mike Wigston to talk to us about RAF and USAF integration and cooperation. Chief, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I was actually your remarks earlier about the young men who made their way illegally at the time to the UK to join the Eagle squadrons just reminded me last night that having seen a 99-year-old Berlin airlift veteran dancing to a jazz band, the Candy Bomber himself, on the night of his birthday, dancing. I was about to get out the recruiting forms there and then and bring him in, but I realised it might look a bit desperate. Yes, we are recruiting, but that was probably the limits of it. Thank you for the very kind introduction. As you've said, I've been in post now for just over 2 months, but I do regard myself as very fortunate for having had a number of jobs and appointments over the last couple of years, which has left me feeling, uniquely and very fortunately well prepared for the responsibilities of this office. One of those great good fortunes was as an Air Commodore, as a Brigadier General, working for one Lieutenant General Goldfein as the CENTCOM CFAC when I was in ISAF Joint Command up in Kabul for a year. His brilliant, inspiring leadership of the air and space battle in the CENTCOM AOR. Left a lasting impression on me, and I do absolutely see it as my greatest good fortune that as chief and in my early months of chief, I'll have the privilege of standing alongside General Goldfein and working with him, and actually continuing that great partnership of our two air forces. I've got some prepared comments that I will talk through, and then hopefully there'll be about 40 minutes or so for a conversation, for Q&A, for you to critique what I've said, but ask my view on things that I haven't said, and I'll go as far as the protocol of these events allow. I should also start by saying, that I have the deepest admiration for the Mitchell Institute itself, and with imitation being the greatest form of flattery, it's something that I sincerely hope I will have the opportunity to replicate in the UK during my time, and we've already put the roots in place for a similar organisation. Advancing the thinking, the theory, and the practice of air and space power. I recognise that the influence of the Mitchell Institute stretches well beyond the Beltway, and the fact that I'm standing here in front of you and I see the uniforms of other Allied air forces in the room talks to the influence of the Mitchell Institute. And I'm particularly grateful for the work that you do with the Royal Air Force. It does inform our conceptual development. We do take your lead, and I think that the conceptual component of air and space power is absolutely reflects the bond between our two nations and, of course, between our two air forces. So thank you very much. That partnering and collaboration that we have enjoyed throughout our two air forces' histories is as important today as it has ever been, because these are challenging times in the international context. The international system that has existed since 1945, that everyone in this room relies on for their security and prosperity, is being eroded by states like Russia and China and Iran and North Korea, actively destabilizing the world order and challenging, indirectly and directly, challenging our security, our stability, and our prosperity. From a UK perspective, our government articulates that as that we're now operating in a state of constant competition and confrontation, with threats to our nation diversifying, proliferating, and intensifying rapidly and ever more rapidly. As our Chief of the Defence Staff, our chairman equivalent, remarked recently, it is hard to remember a time when the strategic and political context was more uncertain, more complex, and more dynamic. I know that General Goldfein has remarked that the United States Air Force of 2030 will be in the fight with the Air Force that he and his team are building for them today. And I'm sure that whoever that Chief of Staff will be in 2030, he or she will be very grateful that they had David Goldfein at the helm now. And I'm certain too that my predecessor, Sir Stephen Hillier, his strategic foresight will be similarly appreciated by the Royal Air Force of 2030. And I'm very proud to be in a position to pick up that baton and build on that legacy. As I've said, alongside General Goldfein, and as a partner chief of the world's two most advanced Royal Air Forces. In the Royal Air Force and United States Air Force shared vision statement, which General Goldfein and Sir Stephen Hillier signed in July 2017, our two air forces recognise the need to integrate and cooperate more deeply than ever before. That's not to say that we weren't already deeply and meaningfully connected, and we have been throughout our history ever since Hugh Trenchard, our founding father, met Billy Mitchell in France in spring 1917. But for today's leaders, there is more to do, and especially as we address the future with potential adversaries like Russia and China and Iran and North Korea. They're becoming more expeditionary in their outlook, more confident in their approach, and more dangerous in the capabilities that they field. It's the fight against violent extremism and the toxic ideology underpinning it that has set the context for operations in the 21st century so far. In that context, air and space power has been the critical enabler. It's been our decisive edge in tackling violent extremism across the Middle East, across Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. And I can say with complete certainty that the streets of the United Kingdom and the US and our allies are safer as a result of what air and space power has done in that time. But we've been able to to achieve that because we have had and we have enjoyed almost complete control of air and space. And so there is a risk of complacency within our forces and actually within our societies about the freedom of manoeuvre that unchallenged control of the air has given us, and likewise our undisturbed reliance on space. You know, why would we be concerned? The UK has not lost a soldier or a service person to enemy air attacks since 1982, and I think the date, fortunately, the date for US forces is even longer. I think somebody said it was Korea. And with our overwhelming reliance on space for just about everything we do in our day-to-day lives, are we too complacent about the disaster that would unfold if we lost space for just one day? And our potential adversaries have not been idle these last decades. They've been watching us and they've been learning. Fifth generation combat aircraft are no longer the sole preserve of our allies. And long-range surface-to-air missile systems are becoming more capable and proliferating to proxy states and other states too. From sub-threshold threats in the grey zone of conflict to hypersonic missiles, from industrial-scale spam on social media to potential interference with our national interests in space, that state of constant competition exists now. And our potential adversaries are contesting our freedom to operate by air and by space. Over Syria, we, the Royal Air Force, the US Air Force, and other allies have been operating in close proximity to Russian surface-to-air missile systems and their latest combat aircraft. In Europe, Russian surface-to-air missile systems now extend into the sovereign airspace of our allies. And Russian aircraft and maritime units operate routinely in the UK FIR, in our airspace and around our shores. It was one of our great soldiers, Field Marshal Montgomery, who observed that if we lose the war in the air, we lose the war and we lose it quickly. Now, I would now add space to that, but Monty can be forgiven for his oversight. But as Chief of the Air Staff, maintaining the RAF's ability to secure control of air and space for all our operations at home and abroad is my foremost responsibility, ensuring that we have the right equipment and the best people to do that. The operation of cutting-edge aircraft like the F-35B Lightning II that we'll be operating from our Queen Elizabeth class carriers will ensure that we remain the leading military ally of the United States. But of equal importance to equipment in maintaining our combat edge will be the ability to manage vast amounts of information and to make decisions more quickly and accurately. And it'll be the superiority of the decisions our people make that will preserve our Air Force's decisive edge into the future, and with that, control of air and space. Underpinned by the principles of multi-domain command and control, information advantage will be a critical enabler of our future success, and speed is the real key here. So it's vital that our C2 systems are connected, networked, and resilient if we're able to establish and maintain that advantage. Our shared vision statement between our two air forces recognises these imperatives, with the aim of enhancing our ability to operate seamlessly and interchangeably as a single force, or alongside each other as the situation dictates. The F-35 is the trailblazer in that regard. Already paying dividends is the close relationship between Royal Air Force Marham, where our Lightning Force is based, and nearby Royal Air Force Lakenheath, which from 2021 will be the USAF home for the F-35 in Europe. This week we trailed 617 Squadron's Lightnings across the Atlantic to the US. Very soon they will embark in our carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth for operational trials off the east coast of the US. We'll be doing that alongside the USAF and the US Marine Corps, and we'll be operating with the US Marine Corps side by side in our carriers. But integration goes much further than simply being able to operate in the same piece of sky or off the same deck. The real challenge of ensuring that our information of ensuring that our information systems, our data links, our tactics, and our logistical systems are all able to communicate with one another and are aligned. Now, we've driven forward the 4th and 5th generation aircraft integration through the point-blank series of exercises involving Royal Air Force F-35s and Typhoons, USAF F-15s, F-35s. Back in July, you may have seen the imagery of our F-35s operating with B-2s in European airspace during their deployment to RAF Fairford. And I can confidently say it was the first international 5th generation training of its kind. We've hot pitted and cross-serviced visiting F-35 squadrons, just as some of you old NATO warriors will remember as ample gain, from the days when we did it routinely. But these days have lost that habit. But our ambition doesn't stop there. The ability to data share and forge deeper interoperability across data link networks has to reach the point where the US and UK F-35s are interchangeable in a foreship, where our synthetic environments are fully connected to allow relevant collective training, and where follow-on operational test and evaluation is optimized to get to our warfighters fast and before they even realize they need it. Naturally, the benefits of collaboration and integration extend well beyond the Earth's atmosphere. And I know that General J. Raymond would extol the virtues of cooperation in the ultimate vital high ground. No nation, not even the US, dare I say it, can work alone in space. So the imperative to work multilaterally is arguably greater in this expanding operational domain than anywhere else. The Royal Air Force and the USAF have been working in space together for over 50 years, and we've taken great strides in recent years to expand our combined efforts. This reflects the reliance we share on space for all of our military activities, but also recognises the emerging threats to our national interests there too. Building on several years of commitment to the Combined Space Operations Centre, the RAF is now a key member of the US-led multinational space coalition under Operation Olympic Defender, giving us the opportunity to provide additional staff to the CSPOC, including in key leadership roles. By the end of this month, an RAF 06, a group captain, will be in the post as the CSPOC Deputy Director, a move that stands testament to the enormous trust that the USAF and US Space Command is placing on the Royal Air Force. But both of our countries recognise, too, the need to generate and if necessary, replace space vehicles quickly and cheaply if we are to improve the resilience of our space-based capabilities and respond swiftly to operational demands. Under our Project Artemis, and not to be confused with NASA's, the Royal Air Force is developing the military utility of small satellites as operationally responsive space capabilities, getting the best information as quickly as possible to the warfighter on land, sea or air. Project Artemis builds on the success last year of our Carbonite 2 small satellite, which was the first satellite in low Earth orbit capable of downloading full-motion color video in real time. The project was just as much a triumph of process as it was of technology, from program initiation to launch to imagery received in just over 9 months. And we're expanding the novel approaches developed by the Royal Air Force's Rapid Capabilities Office, itself a carbon copy of the USAF Rapid Capabilities Office, to deliver aircraft and systems across our portfolio quicker, cheaper, and better than ever before. Principles we're vigorously exploiting in the development of our next generation combat aircraft, the Tempest system of systems. I'd like to finish by saying a few words about our collaboration in the ISR sphere, because it exemplifies the integration that exists between our two air forces. And I'll use, for example, the RC-135 rivet joint. At our bases in the UK, in the US, and on operations elsewhere around the globe, the seamless integration of our crews, aircraft, and systems is a genuine force multiplier. Added to this is the exceptionally close relationship which our Reaper forces have enjoyed, paving the way for the Royal Air Force's new Protector remotely piloted air system. It's the lead derivative of General Atomics' Sky Guardian. It will provide the Royal Air Force with a remotely piloted air system that can operate worldwide in unsegregated airspace, fully compliant for up to 40 hours, and will absolutely change the way that it will transform the way that we operate these systems. And finally, in a talk where I talk about USAF and Royal Air Force relations, I do have to mention the US Navy, because I have to pay tribute to the unstinting support that has been the critical factor in helping the Royal Air Force return to the maritime patrol and reconnaissance business. We could not have asked for more nor learned more in preparation for the receipt of the first of our P-8 Poseidons later this month. I feel I've only scratched the surface regarding the extent and depth of the cooperation between our two countries and between the Royal Air Force and the United States Air Force. It is one of my key goals to reinforce and expand our cooperation and integration over the next 3 years, building on the solid foundations we have built in peace and war over the last century, and which the Mitchell Institute has done so much to reinforce. So thank you very much for your attention, and I now look forward to hearing your comments and questions. Thank you. Glad I mentioned space now. Sorry.
David Isby, Air International. You mentioned the Royal Air Force now has a Rapid Capabilities Office. How important is the American model for the shared objective by both services in building things cheaper and quicker? And what have you learned from the Americans, and what do you think the Americans could learn from you?
So it's a great question, and it absolutely gets to the heart of the essence of the Rapid Capabilities Office. The idea absolutely was born on this side of the Atlantic, but when we saw the model and what it was capable of, it was something that there was no question that we needed to bring in, and we've already had some remarkable successes around some dispensables and around the Tempest Future Combat Air System, and in particular the technology initiatives, that are de-risking the program. You'll understand why I'm hedging my words around what we're actually doing in that regard. But the challenge for us, which I think is also reflected at a different scale, but is a similar challenge for the USAF, is how you scale up. So whilst we have more than proved the worth of the Rapid Capabilities Office in terms of introducing the next generation of expendable decoys, of lightweight swarming drones, of other of other capabilities, the ability to then scale that up to the whole force is a different order of magnitude of challenge, and that's what we're wrestling with at the moment. At its heart, it's about, I think the secret is to get the right team around the table right from day zero, with the right mindset, the ability to challenge, to knock down walls and not take no for an answer, and it's scaling up that team, and it's identifying the right people with the right mindset to be able to play their part, which has been absolutely key to its success.
Hi, I'm Pat Hose from Janes. British company Martin Baker has seemed to be losing out on latest contract awards. The Pentagon, Boeing picked UTC for TX, and the Pentagon is sole sourcing UTC a contract to put new ejection seats in 5 fourth-generation aircraft platforms. Are you concerned that Martin, and the reason why it's sole sourcing this contract is the Air Force is saying that Martin Baker needs extensive development on its ejection seat. Are you concerned that Martin Baker is falling behind in cutting-edge ejection seat technology as you start to work on Tempest?
I really just can't comment on that. I don't have any any sort of visibility of that particular point. So I'm sorry, that's an answer I can't give you. Sorry.
Do you plan to hold an open procurement for your ejection seat as part of Tempest?
Yes. So Tempest now is, as Tempest stands, it is it's a technology initiative to, as I say, to de-risk the main program, and we have already let in the region of 80 contracts, it's 80 different programs. About 160 contracts have been let across the range of the capabilities that you would imagine that would go into a future combat air system. And we're also, we're not also looking at this myopically through through the lens of it has to be a manned combat aircraft. This could well be a system of systems with a, perhaps with a manned platform at the centre, but more than likely, with constituting loyal wingmen and the like. Going to your sort of specific point about what the seats will be, no, I haven't got that level of detail.
Thanks.
Sir, George Nuggles, the Washington representative for the Global Special Operations Forces Foundation. The question, I remember talking to Admiral Woodward after the Falklands about the problems they had down there. And the huge problems because you didn't have an AEW capability down there. You couldn't get the Nimrods down there. So they had to put picket ships out there. And people don't realize the number of picket ships that were lost. The Atlantic conveyor with all the heavy lift. And the two aircraft carriers, the Invincible and the Hermes, how far back they had to stand. I know after that, I think within 6 months, you all in the UK were able to take the radar off the Nimrod and put it on your Sea King helicopters. Right now, I understand the Crow's Nest is going to be the new one. At one point, a few years ago, working with the V-22 program office, your people were looking at taking that kind of capability, putting it on a V-22, which could operate at a higher altitude and provide that capability. Any comments on looking at the future of having an enhanced AEW capability to provide the support for your carriers?
Yep. So you're absolutely right. So Crow's Nest will be the initial AEW platform for the Queen Elizabeth class carriers. But I was talking to the First Sea Lord about this just a couple of weeks ago, and as we look at where we can automate, bring in unmanned systems, remotely piloted systems, then actually fleet AEW support just cries out for an autonomous unmanned system that has the persistence and that we would recognise from remotely piloted or autonomous systems. So actually, I think the next leap in technology beyond Crow's Nest, I would imagine, would be the Royal Navy really embracing remotely piloted or autonomous airborne technology in that arena. Your analysis of the operational need for it is absolutely right, and and it's something that's recognised. So it will be part of the of the force that's fielded on the carriers. But there's much that we can do there, and I think knowing where we are now with autonomous technology, just about to bring in a piloted rotorcraft, actually, the First Sea Lord is already thinking about the next generation. Yeah. Sorry.
So the U.S. Air Force has taken on this digital Century Series initiative as part of Next Generation Air Dominance, and I'm curious how you look at that in the context of Team Tempest, and if that's a model for them, or is their initiative derived from Team Tempest?
Yeah. So I'd like to think that we set the pace on this one, and actually, and this is a case where a bit of competition is a really good thing, and actually, when you look down into the Digital Century Series versus our ambitions for Tempest, actually they match. And I think it will bring out the best in both of our aerospace sectors and the way our government contracts with our aerospace sectors, because I think the prize in this is not just the technology, and nor is it just the work share for industry and sustaining respective aerospace industries. Actually, the prize in this is finding a whole new way to work with our industrial sector, where we get the platform we need faster, frankly cheaper, where right from the outset both the companies that we're dealing with and are incentivized to produce quickly and effectively the capabilities we need, and at the same time that we are that we're not being over prescriptive in terms of defining the capability that we need. So it is a whole new a whole new way of thinking about developing a new platform, and clearly we're interested in what's going on over here. There's a similar initiative going on in Europe, perhaps more traditional in its way between France and Germany and now Spain, but I see this is going to be a really exciting decade ahead of us as we learn from the experience of introducing fifth generation platforms. We have a better understanding of that information fusion and that information sharing and networking, the ability to blend in autonomous, loyal or semi-autonomous wingmen, and then and actually incentivizing industry in an entirely different way. So I think clearly we will be there will be an element of healthy competition, but there'll be cooperation within that as well.
The Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, has set a target for a 5-year development cycle.
Yeah.
No longer than 5-year development cycle. Is that achievable, do you think, within the Team Tempest context?
Yes. And we've set exactly the same sort of testing, design cycle requirements. For us, Tempest would nominally be the system that replaces Typhoon. Now, our earliest Typhoon airframes, so the Tranche 1 airframes, will be going out of service in the 2030s. Typhoon will extend into the 2040s, but at some point we're going to be talking about a transition from Typhoon to a future combat air system, from the 2030s into the 2040s. So we have to get on with that design cycle. And for everything I see, the speed and agility and the team working that the RAF and the Ministry of Defence team alongside the Tempest consortium. Everything in that leaves me confident that actually we can do this, because there's a very very fresh and innovative new approach, and I think I don't know if there's anybody from Saab or representing Saab here, but that the partnership between the UK and Sweden around Tempest is absolutely critical to that, because I think the culture that when you look at what Saab did around Gripen and the Gripen E and the speed with which they did that and frankly the cost that they achieved that spiral development, that I look at that and I say, right, that is exactly what I want. And I think the partnership with with Saab and Sweden in that regard is absolutely critical to the success of Tempest.
Bill Sweetman from Northrop Grumman. If you have as a baseline the idea that the first Tempest main combat aircraft may actually come in and replace Tranche 1 Typhoons, what are the options for absorbing the full 138 F-35s that are called for under the MOU? What's your view on how those would fit in the force?
Yeah, so the UK is committed to buying 138 through the life of the program. We've already programmed in the first 48 of those, so that's effectively our first 2 squadrons. But there's I'm in no doubt that with HMS Queen Elizabeth, as I've said, on operational trials now and declared operational at the end of 2020, with HMS Prince of Wales commissioned formally in December, that the UK is going to continue to build on its F-35 numbers. Now, there is I'd be the first to admit there is a discussion about how many Bs we need and whether we should have an A-B force mix. Now, that's definitely a discussion for the future, but right now the commitment is 138 F-35s with and certainly for the foreseeable future over the next few block buys and confirmed orders, it'll be B models as we build up our carrier force. So I'm picking on this bit here. Should we go to another? Sorry.
Sir Buck Buchanan, Stutz and I had the good fortune some years ago, I'm going to date myself now, working alongside another young Air Commodore Glenn Torpey in the desert. My question goes back, based on my experience, 3 tours in Europe, going back to your remarks about making sure that NATO is interoperable. Are you concerned at all, and do you have a plan to ensure that F-35s going forward can all land, rearm, and refuel at any NATO base? And my specific concern is the move afoot, it appears, where aboard the HMS you will have RAF F-35Bs that are equipped to be and armed with MBDA-produced weaponry, and that will not be compatible with the Marine Corps F-35Bs that may be aboard, especially going forward. My concern being able to rearm and use everybody's weapons.
Yeah. So we recognise that different user nations are going to put different munitions, and the UK is not the only F-35 user that's going to be looking to put its own munitions on. So we have injected a logistical challenge in that from the outset. But going back to so that's one bit that we will have to work our way through. And on HMS Queen Elizabeth, it will mean we will be filling up our magazines with a range of weapons. But actually, more fundamentally, making sure that we don't allow the different forces and fleets to diverge. That MADL remains something that everybody can operate on, and that we take full advantage of Lockheed Martin's global logistics network. We've had some early successes with that. We deployed our Lightnings out to Cyprus. They flew in OIR and Operation Shader for us. And on recovery, we dropped into the Italian F-35 base. There was some technical. One of the aircraft had a technical issue which required a replacement part, and we were able to source that from the Italian supply system. It was not done as an intentional trial. But in these very early days, the system is already working. So I have huge optimism, and I think the F-35 user community is really seized by the potential that this fantastic platform offers, and everything I see, particularly in NATO, but actually globally, everything I see gives me the confidence that we'll have something that is truly interoperable. And when I talked about us cross-servicing the USAF F-35 or the visiting USAF F-35s a couple of months ago. That should be the norm in Europe, and it's got to be the operating model for the F-35 community in Europe, but it can be globally too. So should we stay on that side of the room? Yes.
Sir, my name is Donna Rogers with L3 Harris. Sir, you mentioned the RC-135 Air Seeker Rivet Joint program. Based on it being so seamless and interoperable, we've heard that the RAF is offering to help train the U.S. Air Force's 55th Wing at Offutt Air Force Base because of the flood that happened and actually devastated and impacted some of the U.S. Air Force's training equipment. So we appreciate that, to hear that. I was just wondering if you could maybe expound or talk about any lessons learned that you've gained from the RC-135 cooperative program.
Yeah.
And is that going to be a model going forward for future cooperative programs with the U.S. Air Force?
So the lesson learned is that this is the model for cooperative working going forward with the U.S. Air Force. It's been a yes, clearly it's a niche capability and a very, very special capability, but the force multiplying effects and the the diversity of operating outlook, conceptual approach, and to a degree the technology that the UK is able to bring has I can say without any kind of overstatement has added to the rivet joint force as a whole. So it's absolutely a model that I want to emulate. I think from a bilateral perspective on F-35, we are well on the way to achieving something similar. I mentioned when I spoke about interoperable foreships where we will just be able to pick up and play with USAF F-35s. I can see that as being something that our the commanders of the future should have the ability to go. And actually, what I've really got my sights on at the moment is the P8 program with the US Navy, because some of you might not realise that the UK elected back just after the 2010 strategic review to call it a day with our Nimrod force. We were having airframe issues, and it was deemed at that stage that we would cease flying the Nimrod, which was at the time was our maritime patrol aircraft, and but to preserve the human capability within that force, the core, the core capability, we seeded men and women across the US Navy, the Australian Air Force, New Zealand Air Force, Canadian Air Force, and actually we've been operating. We've had Royal Air Force men and women operating within P3 and P8 community now for 9 years. We're starting to bring them home, but wouldn't it be a shame that having operated as seamlessly within other air forces and navies, that if we were to go our separate ways now, and actually I was just talking at a conference yesterday about the potential and how we must get our heads around and use rivet joint as the model for how we take Poseidon operations forward. So a long answer to your question, but it's a great success, and it's why I mentioned it specifically. Sorry. Next, you're next.
Hello, sir. My name's Jim McCormick, retired Air Force. And I want to ask a really hard question, but I want to start by saying that one of the most rewarding experiences in my career was a joint U.S.-UK cooperative arrangement called Churchill, and it was really rewarding. But shortly after that, we found that the stresses between our governments working together were very specific. In particular, there were different recourses for failure to handle classified information, and that really kind of drove us apart. Well, today, the world's gotten much more interesting, and we're dealing with whistleblowers and book release issues. We have authors who are being fined $6 million in the U.S. for bypassing that process. These all point me towards the cognitive space as that ultimate higher ground. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about how we can continue to work closely together as those challenges kind of tear us apart on both sides of the ocean as well.
So, so I'm sure many of you will have heard General Goldfein talk about we shouldn't be no fawn, we should be yes fawn, and as our starting position, and clearly I would be the first to echo that, but equally we would all recognise that there is some really important and sacrosanct national reasons why you would wish to look after your information. Now, some of that. So where the danger comes is when we default to not sharing. And I think I would, I'm throwing rocks at the UK as much as the US system. Some of our instinctive position is to not share rather than to share. To find reasons to we should be finding reasons to not share rather than reasons to share. And so I see it as just a normal. It is an operating friction that we will have to continue to work through. But I think that there are sufficient fantastic examples of where you can have both. You can have national protected areas, but you can work seamlessly as a force, and those should be the models that we take forward. I would be the first to say that there will be there are issues around information sharing on F-35. I've just been extolling the aspiration of how we will operate, but we are going to have to get at all of these and continue to get at these, because it is against the potential adversaries we face, we cannot afford to have seams between us. So, but the direction of travel, a rocky road, but the direction of travel is in the right one, and nobody is walking away from this discussion.
Good morning. I'm Doug Greenlaw from Research Innovations. Thanks for your remarks. Our Air Force, and in particular General Goldfein, has taken the lead for multi-domain or all-domain developments in the U.S. forces. Is the Royal Air Force similarly leading in this way in the UK, and are you working with the Air Force here on it?
So intellectually, I would say yes. It's in part because of our very special role over the last 2 decades, 3 decades, in fact, of supporting a land campaign. Yes, so that has automatically required our ability to integrate across domains. We are undoubtedly the lead service in space, and intellectually, and in terms of human horsepower, we provide the vast weight of horsepower in cyberspace. But in the UK, you may have seen an announcement this year that the Joint Forces Command is going to be upgunned to a degree and renamed Strategic Command. Now that won't be Strategic Command in the guise of US Stratcom. It won't be the nuclear command. But it will be Strategic Command in that it's the aspiration for it is that it will be integrating force elements across 5 domains, so air, land, sea, cyber, and space. And as that force integrator, as it takes on that role, then for the Royal Air Force, who I would say are certainly primus inter pares of integrating at least 3 of those 5 domains, and are the constituent partner in integrating across the other 2. We've got, of all of the services, we've got the most to offer Strategic Command as it forms, and so there's a really important role for us to play as the new headquarters takes shape, and it's challenging. It is a really difficult concept to get around and to do it as well as we need to, and as I say, for Strategic Command to live up to the vision that we have set it and the ambition that we've set it, the Royal Air Force has got to play a really positive contribution to it. Yeah.
Good morning, John Turpak, Air Force Magazine. Given the situation between Turkey and Syria and the planned unwinding of the Turkish government from the F-35 program, does the UK want a more accelerated unwinding of that program? And how do you assess the risk that F-35 technology will be migrating towards Russia?
So I would absolutely recognise that we have to be constantly on our guard for for migration of any of the technologies around F-35 to Russia or any other potential adversary. So the reasons for the decision that was made regarding Turkey's part in the program, we absolutely understand, and as a enormous international collaborative effort, coming together as customer nations, as user nations, to work our way through that is what is happening today, and I'm very confident that the program will continue, and adjust for the absence of Turkey. Clearly, we would all prefer to see Turkey as remaining as part of the program, but right now, given where we are, the United States approach to it is absolutely understood.
And the risk of sharing of F-35 technology with Russia, given the S-400 situation?
Yeah. Yes. As I say, without getting into the technical details, I absolutely understand why the US has made the decision it has, and there's no question. There's no debate about about the decision. It's just regret that we are where we are with Turkey in the program, and we would prefer to have Turkey in the program.
Sir, Bertie van Geel, Netherlands Air Attaché here in Washington, D.C. You mentioned the long-standing ties between the RAF and the U.S. Air Force, and for good reasons, obviously. And in a broader perspective, NATO and the importance of the transatlantic alliance. Now, within NATO, I would say there's a European community, an EU defense. And I hate to bring up the word, sir, you know where I'm going, the Brexit. And my question to you would be, how do you think the Brexit will affect the European Defence Corporation, and specifically for US?
Yeah. So I as a member of the British government and working in the Ministry of Defence, I consider myself incredibly fortunate that actually, the other enormous changes that other parts of the government are having to make to prepare for leaving the EU, defence to a degree is insulated from because of NATO, and because of those really strong partnerships across the alliance, both in Europe and in North America. It will be business as usual, and I don't and for me, I don't foresee any change in the nature of that relationship. The UK is leaving the institution that is the European Union. We are not leaving Europe, and so continuing and strengthening our investment in NATO and the NATO structures, and recognizing too that we are part of the. A part of Europe, if not the part of the European continent. We're part of Europe, and so Europe's security, the EU's security, matters as much to us as to our own, to UK security. So I'm very optimistic that whatever the outcome of the next few weeks, it will continue business as usual, and actually, as we focus ever more on NATO readiness and NATO operational effectiveness, actually the UK leaving the EU will just be will just be irrelevant in that regard.
Maybe to be more specific, European Defence Fund and PESCO, is that of any concern?
I mean, it's not a concern, as you know. So this is European, this is EU defence structures, which, when we were in the EU, the UK argued against, arguing that actually NATO already provided that that structure. It's not for us to comment on what the EU wish to do around their own force structures, as long as it's compatible with NATO and is not to the detriment of NATO, which I don't think it could be anyway. So. Sorry. Oh.
Richard Abbott, Defense Daily. I was wondering, with the F-35, now that Turkey's out of the partnership, does that negatively impact the UK's own integration, supply chain, delivery schedule?
I would say impact, but not negatively. There is, as I say, it's requiring, for all partner nations, there's a period of readjustment. But we see no impact on our program, both supporting the in-service fleet and the delivery of our aircraft on orders. So we've taken delivery of 18 so far, with more to come, and the schedule, the program remains on schedule. You get the last question. Oh.
I have to get a space question in.
Yes.
It's nice to see you again. Sir, so over the last, say, 5 years, the UK has enhanced its posture in space, in some ways dramatically enhanced its posture in space in the civil arena through enhanced contributions to ESA, in the commercial arena, all the way through the supply chain from launch to satellite manufacturing through to satellite applications, and of course in positioning for military and intelligence space applications. One of the consequences of that has been the need for coordination, and the UK is moving forward with a Space Council. I just wondered what your thoughts were about that and how you saw that playing out and its relevance to MOD.
So yes, absolutely right. There is a sort of live discussion at the moment in the UK about a Space Council, which is a enhanced political oversight of the cross-government space program. I can only applaud it. I welcome it. It's great to see, because it will give that political, the political leadership that any important initiative requires. From my perspective, it falls to me and other people that understand and appreciate that space is now a warfighting domain. That we have to make sure that within the council there is voice and presence enough for those of us who are invested in the security and defence of our national interests in space, and that will take place as in the course of shaping the Space Council and the United Kingdom government's upgunned approach to space. The aim of the council will be to bring all aspects of space to the table, and I'm in no doubt that defence will play and the Royal Air Force will play a really important part.
Chief, thank you so much.
That's all right.
General Deptula couldn't be here today. He was called away to be with our Air Force Air Chief on short notice, but he wanted to give you, share this autobiography on Bud Anderson, who flew his P-51 Old Crow off the shores of the sacred and fertile soils of United Kingdom. And of course, the character of this man and his achievements say a lot about what unifies the community of airmen who really care about keeping this planet safe and secure. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a privilege, and come back anytime. Whatever we can do for
All
you,
right.
just ask,
Very
sir.
kind. Thank you very
You
much.
bet.
Thank you.